Welcome in, everybody, to the Power Option Podcast. Just running the damn ball from west to east. Out here with another week's action. Relatively light, but a bit more risque than the previous week. Garrett, how are you doing?
Oh, man, I'm doing good. Week 11, we're a couple weeks into the playoff picture, 12-team playoff situation happening. This was a take shape week. You finally are starting to get to the point where the conference championship situation / whatever kind of bullshit tiebreakers we're going to end up having to deal with is starting to take shape. For the most part, the tiebreakers aren't going to cause too many problems because a few of those teams are going to play head-to-head. The MAC is going to be a mess, but it's all good. The MAC isn't particularly good this year, so it's just going to be an internalized mess. But home stretch, and it's very exciting. It's a very exciting end of the season, and I'm really stoked for the matchups in the 12 team. I'm just so stoked about it. I don't want this season to get over to get there, but at this point, I've seen all these good teams and the fact that they got to play all the handful of shitty teams in their conference, and so I'm ready for all the good teams to play good teams. I'm ready. I can wait, but I'm ready.
It really is. I know, and we're really working stuff out. And we were talking pre-show. I had a whole thing that I wanted to talk about, but I do want to ask you a question about the rankings and about are they who we thought they were. But before that, you brought up the MAC. I have a couple of people who I work with. They work for another company, but I speak with them regularly. And during a meeting that I had last week, I brought up the MAC and I rattled off like Kent State being terrible, ball so hard, University trying to get a win. They're not going to be bowl eligible, all that kind of stuff. And these guys, both MAC area gentlemen, I think Illinois and maybe Michigan or something like that. And they were like, "Do you live here?" And I was like, "No, I don't. I don't." And they were like, "Why could you possibly know about the MAC?
What value could knowing what the hell's going on in the MAC do for you?" And you know what? They're not wrong.
It's a valid point. And that's what I said
to
them.
Let's be honest.
That's what I said to them. I was like, I know it's absurd that I know as much as I know about any of the directional Michigans or Ball State or whatever, Kent State being terrible. But what I do like about that conversation, what made me happy about having that conversation is like, that's me knowing that and is a result of this podcast, of our relationship over the course of time that we've had it, and how deep it really highlights to me how deep into the college football world we're in. We're not talking about Sun Belt football quite as much this year. It hasn't been as good. The MAC also hasn't been super good. We have the weirdness of the Pac-12, all of that kind of stuff, but it really highlights the depths of college football that you and I like to get into, and I hope that for those listeners out there, we've at least scratched some of that part of your brain getting into some of the oddness of college football, because we do have the ability, and I was shown that by the people that were like, "Why would you care about MAC?" And I was like, "It's a valid point. It's a very valid point." Anyways,
look.
Go ahead.
I had the Tri-Box on yesterday. I watched Buffalo beat Ball State in overtime. I watched Toledo beat Central Michigan, and I watched Bowling Green beat Western Michigan. Bowling Green, who we're just going to get it out of the way since we're talking about it. Bowling Green, which is in the driver's seat basically for the MAC championship game, and then you got a two tie. You got Miami of Ohio and Ohio tied for second. Western Michigan, who's had a slide, lost their last two games. Buffalo, Toledo, who's been really disappointing this year, even though they're 7-3. But they lost two MAC games they shouldn't have lost.
Right. We kind of thought that they were going to be a Liberty of last year.
Really thought Miami of Ohio and Toledo were going to be the two teams you'd expect to fight for the conference championship. I think Bowling Green is ahead of expectations in the conference. Kind of as well as Ohio. Western Michigan has been better. I think Western Michigan being better than people expected maybe mixed up the MAC, caused a few losses.
Yeah, definitely.
They shouldn't have. And Kent State is really, really bad. Probably the worst team in FBS.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate because they're almost always bad, and Akron is again bad, and Kent State and Akron are always both bad, which makes me sad. They're almost always one of the teams. Kent State's usually the one I end up picking up in NCAA at some point.
Right.
Because they're just their badness, and it makes me sad. So, Yeah, that's the MAC.
I know. Yeah, it's interesting. So wait, the question that I have for you in regards to the top 25, I wanted to elaborate. I wanted to talk some shit on Carson Beck, but I'm going to roll that back. But the thing that I wanted to talk to you is, you have regularly on this podcast over the course of this year been like, I don't think it matters yet. So my question I have two questions for you. The first one is, do things matter? And then my next question, my follow-up question to is, are some of these teams are they who we thought they were?
Well, as far as it matters goes, like, look, let's just looking at the college football rankings. I'm just going to go through the top 15 of the college football rankings now, since we're talking about it.
Yeah, good call.
Let's just do the top 15. I don't know that we need to go down from there. I mean, we'll talk about some of these other teams as we go. But at 15, you have Texas A&M, 14 SMU, 13 Boise State, 12 Georgia, 11 Ole Miss, 10 Alabama, 9 Miami, 8 Notre Dame, 7 Tennessee, 6 BYU, 5 Indiana, 4 Penn State, 3 Texas, 2 Ohio State, and 1 Oregon.
Yeah, I'm happy you posed it that
15.
way. Yeah, and I'm happy you posed it that way with this 15, because this is a good this can kind of answer both of my questions, I think.
Yeah, so this is kind of your playoff grouping, right? Obviously, there's a possibility. You've got undefeated Army at 24 that can slide up. Almost everybody underneath that, except for maybe Clemson, is Clemson and Colorado, I guess. One of those teams from 16 down has a shot only in that they could win a conference championship game if they're in a big conference, right?
Right.
Here's where it matters. The fact that Army is at 24 and Boise State's at 13 means that Army and Boise State both won't be able to play in the playoff. They've just made it sure. Even if both of those teams win out and Army is undefeated and Boise State wins out, both of those teams won't make the playoff. It's unfortunate. Do I have a huge problem with it? Probably not. I think I have more of a problem with it with Army being undefeated, because you really should have a chance to play in a championship when you're undefeated. But I don't feel like without Army in the playoff, I don't know that I feel like, oh my gosh, we're not going to have the best champion. Maybe when we get to the end of the season, I will. I might feel more like that if Army goes undefeated, right? I might feel more upset if they go undefeated that it didn't happen, right?
Right. And Army plays Notre Dame?
Yes, and that's the other thing, is that Army beats Notre Dame, then they're probably going to be fine anyway.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's a huge win.
But it's still a good chance that the rankings will keep both of those in a place where one of them is going to be the 12 seed. And the other thing I was thinking about this other day, which I try not to get too frustrated about, but announcers have been calling that race the race for the 12 seed, especially on ESPN, like setting it up to be like, we don't want to piss any of the big conferences out. So we want everybody to understand that we think that this is going to be for the 12 seed, even though certainly Georgia or Ole Miss or Alabama or Miami or Notre Dame or Tennessee could all lose again, and Boise State couldn't. And then they should be above that. They shouldn't be the 12 seed, right? But I digress, because it's still early. Like, even though it's not early, it's still early. Like, there's a lot of still good games going on. Texas could lose to Texas A&M, and then what happens there? You know, BYU, they play like they played against Utah, which is a unique circumstance, but they could certainly lose. And if they lose, or they lose the conference championship game, then you could have a 15-ranked Colorado being the Big 12 champion and getting that 12 seed instead, right? So the rankings matter I think where the rankings really matter is what order the top 4 champions are going to be in, right? The order, the fact that they're in top 4, I don't care. The order they made in matters some, because it determines who you play second versus who you play last, right?
Yeah. Wait, okay, I'm going to pause you really quick. A lot of the things that I've been seeing on ESPN, random YouTube videos, whatever, has BYU in that 4 spot. A lot of places.
Yes, they have to be. Yeah. They're going to. So when you look at the rankings, and this is just for everybody who doesn't understand, the top 4 seeds have to be conference champions, right? So even though the top 4 ranked teams are Oregon, Ohio State, Texas, and Penn State, only 2 of those teams can be one of the top 4 seeds, because 3 of them are in the same conference.
Right.
So only the top team of those 4, so it'll be Texas and then the best team out of Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State. So what that means is that Oregon's going to be if this goes as it is, Oregon's going to be the 1 seed, Texas is going to be the 2 seed, BYU's going to be the 3 seed, and Miami's going to be the 4 seed. right? Number 9, Miami is going to be the 4 seed, right? And so that's also where this matters, right? Because it's just like, okay, how you're putting Penn State over Indiana right now, right? And so then that means that Penn State plays the 5-12 matchup and Indiana gets the 6-11 matchup.
Well, yeah, and that heavily benefits Indiana.
Right. Yeah. I mean, but the problem is going to be the next round, Indiana will play the better of the top seeds that are left.
Yes. Oh, no, right? You know what? No, I got that backwards. What I should have said is that heavily benefits Penn State.
Yeah, it benefits Penn State. Yes. Yeah, benefits Penn State. Like, they're going to have a home game. It's going to be fine, but they're going to play the better. Now, here's where it all comes down to. You still got to beat. Like, this is a season where even as good as Oregon is, it's not like all season we were sitting here going, "Oh, Oregon's the best team in the country."
No, there was a bunch. There was about 5 weeks of sketchiness, just absolute.
In the beginning, it was rough. Yeah. So it's not like, oh my gosh, if you avoided Oregon and you win the national championship. Like, look, if you're Indiana, you're gonna have to beat. Look, how it is right now, I guess you're probably gonna have to beat Ole Miss round 1 at home, and then you're gonna have to beat. Indiana BYU maybe in the second round, or Texas in the second round, and then you're going to have to beat Oregon or Ohio State or whoever, right? If you win those games, and at that point you're going to be undefeated if you're Indiana. You win those games, you're the national championship 8 stars. You're you did it. You're one of the best teams that's ever been a team in football, right?
Very true.
I try to counterbalance the fact that, yes, there's going to be some complaints because some teams are going to have a little bit easier walk of it, whatever. But the fact that we're going to be quibbling at 10, 11, 12 means that I just don't care that much. It's hard for me to get too much emotion if it turns out that, the ones I'm sad about is like Washington State, right? Washington State's got no shot. Right. Even if they've gone undefeated, they probably don't have a shot. Right. They don't have a conference championship game. They don't play really anybody. Right. They don't even really have as good of a schedule as Boise State.
No.
The conference, right? No. So they're kind of fucked. Okay, right? But and Tulane is a really good team that lost to one good team and one average team, right? They could still get in though if Boise loses. They're going to be the top conference champion, just not in the major conferences, right? They got a shot at it.
Right.
So does Army. And I think Army and Tulane, we're going to be one of them, depending on how it goes, right? So I think that there's some unfortunate things that are going to happen when you're talking about 12, but considering when I started watching college football, regularly the number 1 and the number 2 teams didn't play each other in the final bowl to determine.
Oh, right.
You know what I mean?
Right. Shout out BYU.
Yeah, we lived in a world where you weren't going to play 3 of the best 10 teams in the country to win the national championship. And now that's going to happen. So, will I be sad if somebody gets screwed in the rankings a little bit? Yeah. But is it gonna? This is still going to be one of the most amazing college football seasons we're ever going to have if the playoff turns out to be what I think the playoff's going to turn out to be, right?
Yeah, right.
Right, and to your second question, obviously when we talk about we mentioned Utah, I was looking at the Pac-12 standings, it's like Oklahoma State winless in the Pac-12, Utah bad.
Wait,
Oklahoma State
Big 12?
Didn't even have. Big 12, yes.
Yes.
Yeah, Big 12. Oklahoma State didn't even have any real injuries. They just turned out to be bad. Utah had injuries.
Shout out Gundy.
Yeah, right. And so, it's just I look at Alabama right now and I think, you know what? Replacing Nick Saban and Kellen DeBoer, who I think is awesome, they're going to be in the playoff probably if they don't drop another one. But they could also drop another one. And do I think that's crazy? No, I don't think that's crazy. Ole Miss, probably exactly where we thought. Penn State lost to the good team on their schedule, beat everybody else. Sure. Ohio State and Oregon, probably the 2 best teams in the country. And they fought to a sliver of a margin. and they're the top two teams in the country. Am I going to be surprised if any of the teams that aren't one of those two teams are in the championship? Absolutely, I'm going to be surprised. I will be
Yes,
shocked
that for sure.
if either Oregon or Ohio State's not in the championship. Other than that, is there any super big surprises? Colorado's maybe a little bit better than we thought. Louisville may be a little worse than we thought, but I don't know. I mean, 6-3 maybe feels right. Like the trick about the top 25 is that you have to put 25 teams on there.
Right, and that's a big list. It
You
is
know
a
what I
big
mean?
list. Yeah, even
Right?
plus 12, that's a big list.
Yeah, like Missouri's still on here.
Which
Why
is
the
just-
fuck is Missouri still
Yeah,
on
it's
here?
absolutely
Right?
that's absurd. Yeah,
But even though I say all that, like, okay, South Carolina's on here too. LSU is on here too. You know, Clemson's on here too. It's just like, yeah, once you start removing the teams that aren't worthy, you end up putting unworthy teams on there. Now, obviously, there's little differences. There's probably a couple of smaller teams, smaller conference teams that should be on there that don't, and I recognize that. But that's not the way it's going to work. Just because Missouri falls off of there doesn't mean they get replaced by, you know, University of Louisiana Lafayette. You know, they're not going to hop on there just because you took Missouri off there. You take Missouri off of there, and Duke, because they won a game, their ass goes on there or whatever.
yeah, but almost deservedly so. And this
Almost.
I'm happy that you're bringing this up because this is one of the things that what I'm trying to do. I have two brains about all of this. Is like my first brain is like stop complaining, Brian, about who should or shouldn't be here. We're about to watch. We just got rid of, I mean, if anybody on here has been listening for the last 3 years or whatever, like, you know how much I just don't give a fuck about bowls. I
Right.
give a fuck about them in that there's football on in December, and I love that, but they don't mean anything. Like, I don't care about the Alamo Bowl. And so the
Right.
less of them, in my mind, is always better. So what we've done is wash some of that, and that I'm very happy about. And so that's my one side of going, just enjoy what you have. We're about to get the craziest postseason college football that we've ever had, and like, be happy about that. Don't be salty about that. I've had similar thoughts
Sure.
about the college football game, a bunch of other stuff in my life where it's like, just shut up, it's fine, it's great, think about what you have. But then the other side of me is like, as I try to evaluate these things, like, do I think that Alabama should be in there based on the things that they've done, based on what I've seen with my eyeballs? And I'm not a voter, I don't have a sway here, and they've decided what they've decided. Like, I think Boise being outside of the top 12 and Alabama and Ole Miss, honestly, being in there is wrong to me. It's not good. Boise State has done nothing to this point. Okay, maybe a couple of close games against the Nevada teams, but they're still 8-1. Why are they getting pushed against 7-2 teams that I don't think have a shot any more than Boise State does against the top 6 teams in the nation, right? And I would say the same thing about SMU. I would say this, even begrudgingly so, I may say the same thing about Colorado and Kansas State. Like, there's some teams, Army you can't because we don't know, but there's some teams here in the bottom half that, like, I'm seeing these college football rankings, and I'm looking at them. Although I understand why the committee is putting people where they are, because that really are the teams that have the best shot to beat Oregon, Ohio State, Texas, and BYU, right?
Sure.
Because
Sure.
do I really think Army can go 3 games undefeated in this type of gambit? No. I want that. I really, really want that, but it's not real. In the same way that, like, does Washington State, even if they were undefeated, really deserve that? It would be cool,
Right.
but does it actually make sense? No. So I have to quell both sides of me. I want to make sure that I'm attentive to both sides of myself because I want to be critical of the committee and say, like, why does Alabama deserve this? Like, they have not. I know they got the Georgia win, and we had that flash of maybe a Saban type feel, but like, ever since then, there have been moments of sketchiness, and I'm upset that, like, Boise or SMU, Texas A&M for that matter, is getting washed because of Alabama maybe having started with a higher ranking, and that thing is bugging me. However, to also answer my own question about are they who we thought they were, I do think the top 15 that we've talked about, and just quickly from 25 to 15, we have Tulane, Army, Missouri, LSU, South Carolina, Clemson, Louisville, Washington State, Colorado, Kansas, and then Texas A&M at 15. That was from 25 to 15. I think inside of the total, yes, we are in a situation where teams are who we thought they were. But I am going to be a little frustrated by who gets picked because of the degradation. And we are lovers, as we talked about the MAC as we started this podcast. We are lovers of the Group of Five. We are lovers of the ends of football, and they're going to get passed on. Maybe deservedly so, but I'm still frustrated that the big boys get passes sometimes when I don't believe that they should.
See, I think here's the reason why I try not to get that way. I've got two kind of major reasons why I don't like it's not too deep for me. One, the whole process is kind of bankrupt in that you do rankings beforehand, and then you got to move people up and down, and you can't drop people too far. And this is gross. And within there, we also don't have any actual real metric on what they're ranking. That's a good point. Is this the okay? If the team above plays the team below, will they win or not? Right? Is it if the team above plays the team below, will they win enough? But also, how much credit should they get for what they already did? Like, if they win a game that they shouldn't have won, but they win it, does that count? How much does that count? The opponent, right? And so, unfortunately, these are just people that are coming up with their own metric to try to figure it out, right? And the second reason that it doesn't get me too bad is that the advanced stats, like SP Plus, have Boise at 24 and Army at 25 under teams like USC and under teams like, Ohio State is 1, Oregon is 3, Notre Dame is 7, Indiana's 11, SMU is 12, and I also follow an account on Twitter that does a simulated BCS. They use the same numbers and everything that the BCS would do for their rankings, and almost consistently, the teams that would be in the playoff match with the teams that would have been in the playoff in the BCS as well, right? For good and for bad, right? Yeah. And so, you know what? As much as I like advanced stats, I think advanced stats are nice let me put this game into perspective, but I don't talk about them when we talk about team comparison. I thought about it all year. I think about putting something together, and I go, you know what? No. Because at the level we're watching games, that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that Boise State is 24th in SP Plus, right? SP Plus is specifically supposed to be what team will beat the other team based on how those teams perform in the major stats that matter to winning. Their success rate and their turnovers and their turnover luck and their yards per possession, that kind of stuff, right? So when you calculate all those and you balance for opponents, Kansas State 18, like Missouri is 17. Well, when you see Missouri is 17 in the country under that stat, you go, oh, okay, maybe it is reasonable that they're ranked. But that doesn't take away from the fact that when you watch Missouri and you see their results, you go, it doesn't feel like it. But it's also really good statistical defense. All of these variables fall in. And so if we asked 100 people to give their list, those lists, like 100 people, if we asked 100 people to give their list and they couldn't look at the preseason rankings, right? They only could see what's the teams. You couldn't see the rankings of any wins or losses. You could only see the teams, their actual wins and losses at the time, and the score. And we asked them to just make rankings based on that. They would be wildly different. Wildly different.
That's true.
Right?
That's a good point. That's a solid point.
Knowing all that, I just go, it's when the system isn't going to be. The only way the system is perfect is if you say every conference champion and every conference champion runner-up plays in a 10-team playoff, and then you're done. Right?
God, and
there's no at-larges.
Yes.
You got to play in the conference championship game. And the teams that play the conference championship game get a home seed against the teams that don't win or whatever, right?
Right.
It's the only way it can be right, because you're gonna have to pick against these wildly imbalanced conferences. Like, that's the biggest problem. The conferences are so wildly unbalanced that there's no way you can get a list together that's accurate, because USC is 4-5, but by the advanced stats, they're one of the better playing teams in the country because their offense is still going really well.
Right.
Well, the USC win isn't going to get a lot of credit versus a South Carolina win, even though, you know, South Carolina's a little ahead, not hugely ahead, but the South Carolina win is going to get way more value than a USC win, even though by the numbers go, they're not that far apart, right? So I don't know. Yeah. And the other reason I don't bring it up is that North Carolina is 27th on this list. They've been playing better lately, but fuck them. Fuck them.
Fuck them. Yeah. All right. Well, we can. I do want to get into some games. Let's get into some games. But that is a good. I'm happy that you brought it up like that, especially bringing in the advanced statistics of it, because it's like there are also these other things about football that we can't quantify. You know, we always talk about, are you the best team today? Those kind of things. And I'm sad actually that I think I might be bummed out for the rest of this podcast that you brought up a scenario where it's like every conference champion just gets in and we just deal with that. Like, and then we wash that only by them having maybe like an early bye or whatever. Like, that's what I want. That's really what this all comes down to. Because then we just wash it all out. Anyways, all right. Well, let's get into some games.
Yeah, ideally. All right. A big ticket loss in the earlier set of games on Saturday. Miami 23, Georgia Tech 28. Look, Miami's defense isn't very good.
Correct.
As much as I like Mario, he's not a great in-game down football coach. And I think that's the reason that even though I still think they're back in a general sense. And I don't know how they survive without, Cam Ward in the future, but it's Miami. You still get bodies there, and now the brand has some value again.
Right.
But Georgia Tech's a solid team, 6-win team. They're going bowling, nice win, kind of game we were expecting Miami to lose.
Totally, and I think this game is a great game to reiterate my point to talk further about, are they who we thought they were? Georgia Tech has been who I thought they were basically all season. There was a moment earlier when Florida State wasn't a giant flaming tire fire that I thought that
Georgia Tech was really good.
But even since that time, Georgia Tech has been so good. They've been dangerous in every single turn. So it's great that they're figuring things out and they got it done. I think we've talked about Cam Ward a bunch this year, and he is great. But when you have to lean on a guy and an offense so heavily, and you have a really I don't want to say quintessential ACC defense because there's been better ACC defenses throughout time.
Sure, but it's
a pretty
great. Yeah.
It's not a Big Ten SEC type defense, and so when you're doing that, you're playing with fire. But here's the nice thing about this loss, if you can take it, is how much does it matter in the grand scheme of things? This is not enough to get Miami out of the conference championship game. You don't want to take one, but if you got to take one, this is a solid opponent to lose against, and it's okay. It's unfortunate, but it's okay. And I will say the other thing is, I think what it did was expose Miami to me to their flaws at a much heavier rate than I was expecting to feel. I was in the mode of the backness of Miami, and this loss was oh man, they really are the Ward University right now.
Yeah, I guess it didn't. I guess even though I was the one that was talking Miami up, this didn't surprise me. I was prepared for their flaws because of their close game against Virginia Tech, and their I was prepared. I knew that they're one of these games they were going to get snipped. They didn't embarrass themselves. They're going to be fine. They can still win the conference, or maybe they lose to SMU. But I'm okay with all of that, because Clemson's not great, so it's fine.
Yeah, totally. It's gonna result in a crazy thing. I'm happy that this propels SMU in the way that it did.
Yeah. Now another thing that you're going to be really happy about: Georgia 10, Ole Miss 28.
Oh boy!
Look, this is the thing. This was the game that Ole Miss became the team that they were billed to be. This was the way they were supposed to be. A not completely inefficient job by the quarterbacks. They played really good defense. They were tougher than the bad offense that was in the SEC. Carson Beck, who we're just going to talk about, we just talked about it. Is just not. He's not. People are saying he's regressing, which is true, but I don't know how we got it so easily and people didn't get it. I don't know.
I don't either. That's a great. I'm so happy you said that. I'm so happy you said that. Because
don't know.
What do we happen? And maybe if we can bring Ewers into this conversation, there's a lot of people who really put Ewers up, and I wouldn't have thought that. And he's relatively produced to that hype. But yeah, Carson Beck he is who I thought he was. Like he has been that, and the worst part about it is, and what we saw based on this game is he doesn't have the normal Kirby Smart monsters on the defensive side to help him out, to bail him out. And not only that, we can put a lot of blame on Beck, and I want to do that because fuck him. But also the backfield, there was so much talk about this UGA backfield. Etienne was people were like, without him in the backfield because he was suspended or whatever at the beginning of the year, they were like, what could UGA be? We don't even know.
Sure.
We got to wait for him to get back. And since he got back, he has been the most average of running backs. He has been
and one of the reasons why is that nobody has to respect the passing game. Right. There's no gimmies in the Georgia passing game anymore. They don't have all-world tight ends like they always seem to have. Right. They don't have gimmies to where Carson Beck gets bailed out, and you have to respect that. You don't have to respect that very much. Carson Beck is not going to beat you with his arm. Georgia's going to beat you by playing really good defense and scoring just enough points. But Ole Miss is going to beat you by playing really good defense and scoring a little bit more points, and that's what they did.
And that's true. And I like, he comes from our home state, so I'm impartial. I'm already sort of biased towards Jackson Dart. I like a Utah boy, really showing out and really being, going to play with the big boys and being the high quality that some of the Utah players can be out of high school. So that's really cool. But everybody knows how I feel about Lane Kiffin's bitch ass. Everybody knows. I don't think I've ever not said his full name without bitch ass in it in the last 2 years. Sure. And I'm going to continue to never stop because he's a bitch ass.
Sure.
I get it. I think Ole Miss is good enough to be in the playoff, begrudgingly so. I am begrudged by that, but I think that they've shown to this point that they're better than Texas A&M. I'm okay with that. They're definitely better than LSU. I think they're better than Alabama, probably.
Right.
In this game, they only had one rusher who had 50 yards, and that was Jackson Dart. The other rushers had 28, 24, and 20 yards rushing totally, basically off of 25 snaps across the rushing plays. So they're not working with a ton of stuff that is going to provide them what it is, but their defense is good. They should be where they are. I'm okay with it, even though I hate Lane Kiffin's bitch ass. But they've done everything that they've needed to. They were the best team on the football field that day.
So here's what I want to say to put Ole Miss into perspective, and then we'll move away. There are two teams in the top 10 that are in the top 5 in offense and defense and special teams in SP+. It's Texas, and not special teams. Texas is one of the worst special teams in the country. But Texas is 4th on offense and 4th on defense. Ole Miss is 5th on offense and 5th on defense. Every other squad is either really different, like Ohio State's 1 on defense and 8 on offense, which is still great, but it's separate, right? You got Oregon, 2 on offense, 10 on defense, whatever. Or they're just 7 and 8, like Georgia or whatever, right? So they've been consistently, when you talk about teams that are what they are, Ole Miss is one of the most are what they are teams in the country.
That's very true. That's very true.
Right? And they know their identity, and they're not great, and they could lose, but they're also losing to some of the other really good teams in the country.
It's very true. Yeah.
It's fine.
Yeah, it's cool.
Fine.
Yeah.
I'm just going to go through a couple of these games as the poo-poo platter of good team versus average or bad team. Michigan 15, Indiana 20. Indiana gets their 10th win. Huge accomplishment for everyone involved. I'm so excited for that.
Absolute insanity, yeah.
Army 14, North Texas 3. The dream is still alive at Army. They don't move up very far because, they don't move up very far, but they beat a good North Texas team that's been scoring points all year, and they only held them to 3. So they held them to 3, which is great. We've got Clemson 24, Virginia Tech 14. Clemson beats an improving but average Virginia Tech team. Close, decent win for Clemson. They're still in the playoff race. Texas beats Florida. What was the score of that game? It was like 41-14 or something. 17. 49-17.
Yeah.
Florida average to bad. Texas good.
Yeah.
Let's see. Any other ones? Penn State beats Washington. Washington is average to bad. Penn State is better than probably 6 teams in the country, which is what's going to bite them in the playoff. But as a Utah fan, if you told me, hey, you're going to have a top 10 team every year forever and they're not going to win a national championship, I'd be like, all right, that's fine.
Yeah, that's what, if you're living in State College, you might be begrudged, and similar to many Utah fans that we've talked about before, but like, how mad really can you be? Like, this is pretty
of course
awesome.
You want to be better,
Of course.
But there's only a few teams that are going to be better, and you're one of the few teams that can say that year in and year out, 125 teams in the country every year are not going to be better than you, and you're one of the few teams in the country that can say that. So.
Yeah, and you just keep Happy Valley rocking, and you still. I don't know if we can still call Penn State linebacker U, but it has that aura at least around it. There's a lot of good stuff here. So that's a win against the Washington team that's not bad. The only notes that I really want to have on those games is that, like, again, Indiana 10-0, absolute insanity. I thought that they were going to beat the pants off of Michigan because I don't think Michigan's anything, but whatever, it doesn't matter. They went 10-0, that's okay. Tech against Clemson. There was a moment in time where I thought Tech could like be around, but they did the thing that you can't do as a bad team, and they just didn't have a second half. And Clemson knows how to be good in the second half, and so they won that game. What are you going to do? And then Army against North Texas, I think, is the best of those games because North Texas, like you were saying, is legit. Like North Texas is a team in the American. Yeah. Like they're going to still cause some ruckus. They're not going to win the American, but like they're going to continue to be a problem for people. They've been scoring a bunch of points. So the fact that Army can get this win, especially because let's see, how far are they away from Notre Dame? They have Notre Dame this coming week. To get a win like this is got to be pretty confidence boosting. You got to go to South Bend and you got to win there, which is not going to be easy. It's probably going to be impossible, but this is the type of win you want to have pre Notre Dame.
Yeah. Look, North Texas is very solidly about the 75th strength team in the country. Their EPA per play is exactly 75th. Their available yards percentage, which is just of the yards that you could gain when you get the ball, how many of them did you get? They're 72nd. Their success rate, they're 74th. The yards per play, though, they're 41st. So there you go. The offense can go burr a little bit.
Right. True.
And Army's defense has been really sound. And Army had a 21-play, 94-yard drive that took almost a quarter a quarter plus. Almost all of the third quarter plus a quarter, which is the most beautiful thing that you could do in the world.
Right. Just absolutely military killing them.
Yeah, absolutely beautiful. Game of the day: Alabama 42, LSU 13. I mean, the game, a ranked versus ranked game of the day, not quality, because Alabama scored early, scored often, didn't have to throw the ball a lot, beat an LSU team that is very flawed. But when we're talking about as we kind of mentioned, when we're talking about 10 to 25, every one of those teams is flawed in some way, and LSU was flawed by having a not great offense, and Alabama defense handled what they needed to, and then they did everything else they needed, and Milroe had quite a game.
Yeah, which is, I mean, if you look at the stats of it, I mean, he was 12 for 18, 109 yards passing, no touchdowns, no interceptions, but that's what you want. But he had 185 yards rushing, which is huge. 4 touchdowns
carries.
Rushing. So, like, that's the exact type of line that Saban would have lost to if another team had Milroe on before, for sure. So that's a great win for them. And then LSU, they're trying to live and die by Nussmeier, which is just a rough situation. I mean,
he's not that good.
No, he went 27 for 42, 239 yards passing. He had a touchdown and 2 interceptions. Like, he's just, I don't know what Brian Kelly's trying to do. I don't think that he's in a position where that the LSU folks need to get like super worried. I think they're fine. I think this is another, like, based on the rankings, based on what their potential for the end of the season is going to look like, all that kind of stuff. I think if you're an LSU fan right now, you're still pretty happy. You had one of the greatest college football teams that has ever existed, a couple of years ago, but like, to morph from that into a Brian Kelly era, and it looks like this is not horrifying. I don't know
see. Here's
if
the
you
thing.
love it.
Here's what I'm going to say. I disagree, and this is why. This is exactly what he was at Notre Dame. Almost exactly. Matter of fact, he's exactly what he was at Notre Dame, but a step off. He's like not even playing playoff games, right?
Yeah.
So, yes, in a general sense for LSU, it should be fine. But it's just like we went through all the trouble to get this guy, and he's worse here in the job he needed to have than he was at his old job. He's like supposed to have better resources here.
Yes.
He's supposed to have blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And instead, we have this quarterback that people are trying to sell themselves on that isn't good. They run an offense that doesn't suit him, and he doesn't run very well because he's scared to run, but if he did, they'd be better. And Alabama comes in after looking shaky and beats the shit out of you. That's not what you hired him for.
Right.
Now, I think he should go to fucking hell, so I don't care. But I can see an LSU fan being frustrated.
Okay, you know what? You've converted me because you're right. He is the Notre Dame Brian Kelly, and at Notre Dame, that was fine because Notre Dame Catholic school, one of the greatest college football programs of all time. But like, there's stipulations to being at Notre Dame.
Sure.
And it's got to be tough. But there isn't stipulations to be at LSU. You can be Ed Orgeron and win a national championship with one of the greatest teams that have ever been put together in college football history. That's possible at LSU. You can be Nick Saban and go there, win a national championship, leave for the Miami Dolphins and be a terrible NFL coach. Like, LSU provides that. The Death Valley faithful provide that. And so, you know what? You've 100% converted me. I'm taking it back. Fuck LSU. Fuck Brian Kelly. You guys got to figure it out. You're right. You're 100% right.
Yeah, it's just disappointing. I would be disappointed if I was an LSU fan, and especially since of the fact that, like, about every decade, LSU is good for a championship. And
for sure.
I have never felt in the entire time that Brian Kelly has been at LSU that they're close to that.
I agree.
I absolutely don't. This team with him and a head coach could win the kind of games they need to win it.
I mean, and even Manti Te'o, Notre Dame, even when they were kind of in the mix back then, like, I wasn't like, oh, for sure Notre Dame gets there.
He was for sure going to lose a big game there anyway, but at least he lost the most important of the big games, not like these games generally.
Right, true.
However, nobody at LSU should be as disappointed as Florida State University 3, Notre Dame 52.
Oh, man.
This is one of the all-time collapses. Like, this is historic kind of collapse that's happening at Florida State.
Like, I don't even, it may be the worst one ever. Like, at this point, I don't even know how to, like, I was just making fun before. Like, I've just been making fun this whole year. Because you have an ACC that's been a solid ACC. We talked about it a bunch, and you're in this schedule, but like, then Notre Dame just puts you, I don't even know how to describe it. Like, they just make you look like fools, like the fools that you are. It's as if, because it's Norvell, right? That's who's the coach there. It's like Norvell was just like, I just am trying to get a paycheck. Like, that's what this looks like. There is nothing more than that. He is only there to get paid, and he's only there because he the last year happened. He complained at the committee. He complained about everything that's going on. And then when he knew he was out, him and his team just went like, I don't know, guys, should we just play football, or I don't know, what do you want to do? And then they've continued to do that. It's absolutely epic in the ass hattery that's going on in Florida State. It's unprecedented. I do not think that there is a worse one. Like, on talent alone, they should have scored 2 touchdowns in this game. Like, how are we here? It's bonkers.
Right. And look, they had 10 players drafted from the previous year's team.
Huge.
Like, thinking that they're going to fall off is normal, right? Like, yeah, if they, it would have been a shocking season if they'd won 9 or 8 games, right? Like, 8 games seemed like the low end.
Right. Bowls, you got to go all one.
Yeah, but not like oh my God, they're definitely going to get another win because they play Charleston Southern. They're at least going to get one more win. And they might not beat Florida. I don't know why they would at this point.
I don't think so either.
As interestingly bad as Florida is, and maybe they can get up for the Florida game. But if the team's already done, like why would you not have quit at this point if you're on that team?
No,
right?
you just go to you go to practice, you go to school, you take a nap, you do late night film, you go to bed. Like, what else is there to do?
Yeah, you're just trying to put together things for pro tape. You're like, look, hopefully, and you're trying to prepare for if you got to transfer away.
Right.
Like,
that's
like
huge,
I need to make tape for myself so I can find a place to go next year.
And I just we can move on after this, but it's like I feel like, and look, I'm about to sound like all the assholes right now, but like I feel like with the minimal knowledge of football that I have, if I went to a school that previously they had 10 guys go to the NFL, which is crazy. Right. That's such a huge draft that I could just go and convince another 10 18-year-olds, 17-year-olds, whatever, to come to my school based on that. And those guys would be so good that we could get 6 wins. And like the fact that we're not even there is just like, it blows my mind. So anyways,
it's hard to not have 6 wins at Florida State.
It's crazy.
That should be it should be like if they go 0-3 next year, you got to fire him. I think you have to fire him now.
I think so too.
But it's so unprecedented. I could see them going like, "Wait, this doesn't make any sense."
Right.
Like it would be kind of reasonable for me to see them come and go like, "Look, guys, this is so unprecedented that we think there's got to be something else in play. You can't be a good enough coach to get a team to that point and then fall off this badly. Right. Like, one of those two things are fake, and we got to give them a chance to find out what they are.
Yeah, it's like the water was poisoned or something. They added styrofoam weights to the weight room or something. Like just something insane happened. And so
but as far as I'm concerned, if you're at Florida State, you can't accept this. You got to fire the guy. You got to offer Kurt Signetti $1 billion
for sure.
So you got to offer somebody like that all of the money in the world to come rehabilitate this thing.
Yeah, even Dion, whatever. Like,
offer Dion $1 billion
for sure. Just get it done.
Because if Dion comes to Florida State and they only win 3 games next year, that's okay, right?
Right.
But if they only win 3 games next year, then you don't get Dion the year after that,
no.
unless you're gonna open unless you say, look, Dion, we're gonna name the team Florida State Dion. Like, you're going to have to cut that kind of check to get him back there. Or actually, you may not. Look, I think actually one more year. The trick is he's going to be in Colorado for one more year. You just may not have the time to get Dion if you want him. And after this year, Dion would be fine because you can't be any worse.
No.
If Dion comes out and only wins 2 games, and Dion can just say, "Look what I did at Colorado. I made it to the playoff after being terrible, and nobody thought I could do it. Don't worry." Florida State would just cut the check. But here's the other thing: if at the end of the season Dion says, "Hey, Florida State, I'm going to leave Colorado," they could still just fire him and hire him. So I guess I shouldn't get in my feelings that bad.
Right.
Boise State got a win over Nevada. Boise State did not look good, even though Genty had 200 yards rushing. Nevada is the best 3-8 team in the country by far. They're a decent team. They're going to be, I think, pretty good next year. But it's fine. This is the kind of game you just got to win because sometimes you just got to win. You got to win. Like in these situations, you just got to win games. Just like BYU 22, Utah 21. BYU is by far the worst team. They shouldn't have won that game. Sometimes you just got to win games. Yeah,
and we've talked about it a bunch already. But like, are you the best team today? And BYU did it, and their thing, some people, I'm sure that there's some Utah fans that are going to be on the horn being like, well, let's talk about the calls. Let's talk about how the game ended. And I think that that's all valid for sure. But whatever, football's football. It causes nonsense. Utah didn't put themselves in a position to win outright. And so then you get some nonsense. And that's what happened.
You can't look. This is the thing. You can't go. Sorry, I just knocked my thing over. So I remember to fix that.
Okay. All right. Quick pause.
Here's the thing. You can't go punt, interception, punt, punt, punt against an undefeated top 10 ranked team and then be mad that you walked away with a loss. You can't do it.
It's just,
I do not care
God.
what the fuck the officials did. Unless they intercepted the ball, ran it for a touchdown, and gave BYU the points, you got to fuck off with all that. Yeah. You could if you're going to do all that and give up a kick return touchdown, you don't deserve to win. I do not care. I can't hear about that call. I can't hear about it.
No, and it's just the same. It's like the same thing. And it's the thing you brought up to me, like when I was real young. And it's just like if you're going to blame the kicker for why you lost, then you lost before the kicker was a part of it.
Yes.
I get it. I know that you need a good kicker. He needs to be an established part of your game. He needs to be quality. He needs to be the clutch that you need. Of course, it is recommended. Yeah. But like if that's what you're leaning your football team on, if that's what you're leaning your win on, then you lost before, and that's that shit, you know. So, but back to the Nevada Boise State game. Look. The coolest thing about this to me, I'm all in on Boise State. I love what's going on. I love Genty. I love everything that's happening up there. I've always been a huge fan of the Boise State team since the Statue of Liberty play way back in the day.
Sure, greatest college football game of all time in my opinion. Still
true, and fuck Oklahoma. But the coolest thing about Boise State doing this is that Genty still got his, and that means that even though it was close against a pretty as good of a 3-8 team as there can be,
a good team. It's a good Nevada team.
Then that means that Boise State still have a game plan and it is working. They wanted to score more points. Maybe they should have. Maybe we have to have some conversations about defense and all of that.
They got to be able. They've got to find a way to throw the football because it's great that they can run the ball this well and they're going to be able to run against probably anybody. But you're not going to get a chance to not throw the ball successfully at all on the road at Penn State.
Right.
Like, you're just not.
Right. This is going to be a problem, but it is enough for them to get to the playoff. And I think that's
all you need.
That's kind of where we're at. That's what I hope the Boise State faithful are thinking, like, let's just get there.
Sure.
We'll lay out our cards when we get there, but like as long as we're at the party, we'll be at the party. If we got to be audience members drinking a beer in the corner, let it be.
Yeah, look, here's the thing. This is the interim coach that became the head coach that they stuck with because the team loved him. We see this kind of stuff happen and it doesn't work.
True.
Right? Like maybe what's happening at Michigan.
Right.
But they had every reason to be Michigan.
Exactly, for sure.
And they weren't. So, four thumbs up there.
Yeah, it's great.
All right, let's quickly go through the Week 12 games that are worth note. We have tonight more Maction tonight.
With some Wednesday
really
Maction.
Important games. Eastern Michigan travels to Ohio. That's a big one. Ohio's an 11.5 point favorite. Miami of Ohio has Kent State at home. They're a 30.5 point favorite. Akron and Northern Illinois play. Northern Illinois is a 14-point favorite. So, two of those games absolutely are going to have something to do with the MAC championship.
Yeah. So it's cool if you're into some action and you're hearing this pre all of this. Like, hopefully you watched it. Who knows if you'll hear this, but like, hopefully you did. And for those MAC folks out there, like, this is a cool Wednesday. It's a great. I'm happy that these the Group of 5 teams have gotten the Tuesdays and Wednesdays and Thursdays because this is a great thing for that.
Yeah, dude, I can just have it on, and they got them at the same time. And, I would have been frustrated with this back in the day, but now I get to put the triple box up. This triple box. I can put the audio on the closest one and just peek over my shoulder as it's going.
Right.
And I think it's great. I'm glad that that's a thing that's part of the college football kind of universe.
Me too.
All right. UCLA at Washington is an interesting game, 4-5, and those teams are trying to play for bowl eligibility. UCLA may not be as bad as we thought they were going to be at the beginning of the season, which is interesting.
Yeah, they're
Washington's
kind of
a 4-point favorite at home. Yeah,
they're kind of building, which is cool. I can't say that I thought Washington was going to be this good. I don't. I think if you'd pressed me, I would have said no. You lose your coach. You lose a great quarterback. You lose all of the stuff that they lost. The fact that they're 5-5 is great. And I mean, it's got to be huge for the folks in Seattle. So that's great. And UCLA doesn't look like total schlubs, which is also just nice, I guess. Like I would like to live in a world one day where UCLA is not the tiny redheaded stepchild in the corner that lives under the stairs to USC. We're not there yet. I don't even know if we're getting there, but this has been, they're building into not being trash. So hopefully they can, I would like to see them win to get closer to bowl eligibility, and maybe they can do something with it. I don't know if that's going to happen, but it would be interesting.
Yeah, I think that unfortunately for both these teams, neither of them are going to say that it was a good year. Like, even though Washington did have a lot of losses, they really probably lost some games they shouldn't have lost. Like,
I think so too.
Their talent should have been
something. And they got the coach from Arizona before, and Arizona last year.
Yeah, but you know what? Now that I
good.
think about it, I think they're in the absolute middle of the Big Ten, probably middle bottom of the Big Ten. That's fine. It's fine.
Yeah,
you know what? Everything's
that's
fine.
A big run. Yeah,
whatever. It's fine.
Yeah,
Clemson travels to Pittsburgh. Clemson's a 10-point favorite. Pittsburgh doesn't got it, but they could still beat Clemson.
I hope they do. Just 'cause it would be cool to see Pitt do it at home. I don't think that they will. I don't know if they're a 4-quarter team. Klubnik might be enough, and the Clemson defense might be enough. But I would love to see Pitt in the yellow and blue get it done. And the fact that Clemson is a 10-point favorite, I like this also as a bet. Like, I think this game might be closer to 7. I hope that it is. I don't know if it is. So this is kind of an interesting parlay bet if you got it.
Oh, I don't know. I think if Clemson wins, they win by like 25 points or something.
I can't fault you for that. I just hope. Maybe I'm biased because I'm always kind of a Pitt fan, and I hope that they're better, and they've been better at times. So I don't know. You might be right.
Sure. Let's see. Ohio State travels to Northwestern. Ohio State's 28.5-point favorite. Almost not worth mentioning, but it's just right next to a game that I thought was the 2 games that. I think there's 3 games in this 11 a.m. block that are super interesting. Actually, more than this 11 a.m. block is fire. You got that Clemson-Pittsburgh game. You got Louisiana Tech at Western Kentucky. You got Ohio State Northwestern, which is not interesting. But then Texas at Arkansas, where Texas is a 13.5-point favorite, and Tulane at Navy, where Tulane is a 7-point favorite.
Yeah, you're right about the fireballs. I don't think. I'll also throw Colorado and Utah in here just because. Yeah. Just because Colorado is 11.5-point favorite, I think that they get it done. But Utah has now, with the BYU win, shown that they're capable at if they can put everything where they have a brand new quarterback in there, they could get it done. The Texas-Arkansas also, the fact that Vegas didn't put this at like 20 points or 17 points even makes me think that like if for some reason Ewers gets shook up or something. The Texas defense is good, but like Arkansas has had flashes to me this year to just ruin somebody's lives. I wouldn't be shocked
if Arkansas won this game. If Arkansas won this game, I would not wake up the next day if I didn't see it and you told me. I wouldn't wake up the next day shocked. I would go, I can see Arkansas putting together. Arkansas is one of the teams that could just put together at home the perfect game to beat Texas. I'd be fine with that.
Yeah, it could happen. And Texas Arkansas is touching states. It's not a rivalry, obviously, but it's got notes of it.
Kind of,
it's got notes of it. I know there's some East Texas, West Arkansas high school teams that are regularly rivals and that kind of stuff. So that's kind of interesting. And I think potentially game of the we haven't gotten into the rest of it, but the potential game of the day could be Tulane Navy. Like I think Tulane's got enough, but this could be a real ass game.
Yeah, here's the thing. I think Tulane breaks Navy in half. I think it's going to be like 42-20 or something. That's what I think. But if it's, I'm hoping it's not. I'm hoping that it's the matchup it deserves to be. That's what I hope.
I just think Navy's going to do the Navy thing and just eat up a lot of clock, make things uncomfortable for Tulane. Be unique in the way that they are. This could be game of the day, especially Vegas with the 7-point favorite. Like that's interesting.
I don't know. The way they lost to Rice and Notre Dame back-to-back, I just don't think they got the juice. But again, I'd be happy to be wrong.
Yeah.
All right, let's see. And Utah, Colorado. Colorado's an 11.5-point favorite. I agree. Utah absolutely can put together the kind of game to beat Colorado. Or Colorado could win that thing 38-12. I wouldn't be shocked by either.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Jacksonville State hosts Florida International, where they're a 14-point favorite. They should win handily at home. They've been very good lately. It's just an important game for them to try to play in the championship and the
Conference USA. Yep.
Yeah, Conference USA championship, and they're right there. And Michigan State at Illinois. Illinois is a 3-point favorite. Those two teams are probably closer in talent. I think the line ends up making this just be close. I don't think it'll be a good game, but it actually could be a quality game to watch, but it'll be a close game, I think, which is more than I expected to say for Michigan State. Well, in Illinois, too.
Yeah, it's very middle of the road Big Ten football.
Sure. The middliest.
The middliest, yes, of Big Ten football, which is
which is a credit to Michigan State. It's a credit to Michigan State.
Yeah, very, very
and
true.
To Illinois
and
too,
Illinois.
I guess.
Yeah. But yes, you're right, because Michigan State could have been. The fact that they have 4 wins right now is bonkers to me. So that's great.
Yeah. In a game that is probably worth keeping an eye on, it may be good, it may not be. Boston College at SMU. SMU is an 18.5-point favorite. This is where the pressure starts to hit for SMU. This is like one of those games where it's just like, hey, look, you got to keep it together. But I think Castellanos for Boston College, he's not playing. I think I saw he was going in the transfer portal.
Yeah, I see. I see that. Yep.
Yeah, they might be shook, and SMU might win that easily. But this is one of those don't fall asleep games. Just win it easily.
You get it. Yeah, just SMU, for the love of God, just get things done. Do what you're supposed to do. Don't let any flaws happen. It looks like Boston College is shook enough that I think it's going to be good. That's why Vegas is just putting this line crazy, and I hope that's what happens, because I'm all in on SMU, just like I'm all in on Boise State. I'm all in on these sort of random teams that we got, and I want SMU to just go in, get it done, get home. Let's go to the next one and get to the ACC championship.
Yep, agreed. Both Penn State and Notre Dame are over 20-point favorites. Penn State on the road against Purdue. Notre Dame at home against Virginia. Obviously, blowing out Purdue doesn't matter. Virginia's gamey, though. Virginia can play a little bit of football. So if Notre Dame is good, they should handle Virginia with ease. But it's the kind of game that it's another one that if I woke up and you told me that Virginia beat Notre Dame, I wouldn't fall over shocked.
I'm with you. I think. I mean, they just beat Florida State, which basically means nothing. But they've been, to do what they did to Navy and to be where they
good.
are.
I think they're good.
So I think, so hopefully they are. But Virginia's not. They're no schlubs. So
Virginia can play. I mean, Virginia is not great, but they can play. Notre Dame certainly has had propensity to play down to the quality of their opponent. Yeah. And if they do that, and Virginia is a team that's capable enough to beat them.
Yep.
We've got Missouri at South Carolina, which is interesting in that rank for rank. It's gonna finally eliminate somebody off of the ranking list.
Right.
And so that's interesting. And they're two teams that have a really interesting identity. If Missouri gets the offense going, they're very good. South Carolina's got studs. They don't have quite enough studs, but they got studs everywhere.
Yeah, I hope that Missouri just gets washed just because I'm done with them and I don't want to deal with them anymore.
And I think they will, to be honest.
South Carolina, but I honestly think even more so than that, just because I'm sad that Mizzou isn't what they were, and that makes me not want them to be around at all. Even more than that, I think this is going to be not fun. This game kind of pisses me off because this is the type of game that SEC fans go like, this is what the SEC is about. This is exactly this is why we're the best the best conference in the nation. Right. And it's like, and you're not that. These are two perfectly average teams. This is Michigan State, Illinois to me. Maybe Michigan State is, I know Michigan State is the worst of all of those teams I just said, but this is the most middle ass SEC game, and it's just convenient that we're ranked to this point. I'm fine with it, but I just want it to be done with so we can get done with it.
Yeah, but all of those teams lost to the clearly better teams on their schedule easily.
Exactly.
And everybody's just like, but they only lost to the top 3 teams. It's like, because they played the top 3 teams, and then they played teams 40 through 50, and they're much better than those teams, which is great. But that doesn't mean they're 20.
Right.
But fine. I don't care. I'll have it on. That's a good 3:15 bridge. If it turns out to be interesting, I'll watch it.
Yep.
The announcing team will be good. Whatever. It's fine.
It'll be fine.
It's not as good as Arizona State at Kansas State. Kansas State's an 8-point favorite. And Boise State at San Jose State, where San Jose State might have the best not mentioned player in the country, the wide receiver that's leading in catches. He's leading in receptions, reception yards, receptions for touchdowns. What is his name? I got to find him now.
I'm with you.
Nick Nash.
Yes.
He got 1156 yards, 13 touchdowns, 86 receptions. If Boise State didn't exist, he might get more love. but this is going to be a very nice win. It's a kind of game that you travel to San Jose State, you push their dick in the dirt, then you might slide up ahead of somebody and not get that and get out of that 12 seed.
Yeah. I think this is a vote. This is a voters game. Like if you beat San Jose State and you do it like you should do it, then you get all the nods. And as a secondary to another guy who's not getting as much hype maybe as he deserves is Cam Scatterbo in the Arizona State Kansas State game.
Yep.
And this is, I think, I don't really understand K-State. I'm always I think it's been noted on this podcast for a long time that I'm pro Kansas State. I love Kansas State. I want them to be good as much as they can be. This is a weird Kansas State team. They got their asses kicked by BYU. They have been, I thought that they were going to win the Big 12. You had asked me at the beginning of the year. I think we talked about it at the beginning of the year. I thought for sure that they were going to be.
They really shouldn't have lost to Houston. Even though Houston's improving and good, and I think I mentioned before this podcast that Houston maybe has the best coach in the conference. And so then, surprise, they showed up and beat K-State. So I got to give myself a little bit of props for that.
Shout out.
This is actually, the more I think about it, considering what Houston is now, we didn't know this before. I don't think we knew that Houston was going to be gel this well.
Yeah.
I thought they might, but I don't know if we knew that. But if you take that away and you think, you know what? If I told you that with their schedule, with Kansas State's schedule, that Houston was going to be the second or third best team on their schedule, and they actually, BYU's the first one, Tulane's the second one, Colorado's the third one, surprise, and Houston, and West Virginia turned out to be not that bad. Like, when you look at their schedule, the Big 12, they avoided Utah, which means that there was one good team that they didn't play. Oklahoma State was supposed to be good, and they're not.
Right.
But you've got teams that are building. Houston, Kansas, they beat Kansas close, and it's a rivalry game. But Kansas might be putting shit together. West Virginia might be putting shit together. Yeah. So, but you're not. But if you turn around and Arizona State wins, I'd be like, okay, yeah, sure. But that's just because Arizona State might be decent.
Yeah, I mean 7-2 Arizona State off of a home. Yeah. I'm pretty sure they got a hometown boy coach in there now, and Cam Scatterbo is Cam Scatterbo. The only thing which I didn't know when I started this talk about Arizona State is he does have a shoulder situation. So I'm seeing here that there's a note that he's probable. But if he's healthy, then Kansas State's got to look out. I think Kansas State wins this. I think 8.5 is a good number. All of that makes sense to me. But Kansas State can't. They got to make sure they get everything buttoned up in Manhattan.
Right. Yeah. Okay, great. Louisiana hosts South Alabama. Louisiana's a 7-point favorite. I think that might be a pretty good game. Over under.
That's gonna be fun. Yeah, good Sun Belt teams.
That'll be fun. Yeah, I think that'll be fun. Oregon travels to Wisconsin. I'm interested in this because it's Oregon traveling to Wisconsin in a Big Ten game.
Right.
Like, just the fact that we're about to see that happen excites me to no end. It's like, this is the shit about college football that's meaningful. Even if Wisconsin gets blown out, or even if Oregon loses, because they could lose to Wisconsin and be okay, right? But they don't want to. They want to beat the crap out of Wisconsin, and they should. But it's just like, you know what? Having a conference game at Wisconsin is not a joke.
No.
Like, they're going to get more credit. Yeah, they're going to get more credit for being good than maybe they deserve. They're not much different than South Carolina and Missouri ultimately if they win this game, but it's still cool. Like, it's just a cool thing that's happening.
Yeah. Right? I think Oregon has been swinging that big number one stick around. I think 14 feels good, all that kind of stuff.
Feels fine.
Also the fact that Vegas didn't put this at 21 is like, well,
absolutely.
Hey,
they get some respect for playing at home.
You got to go
a little bit of respect.
Yeah, you got to go to Camp Randall and win, and that's not a small task. That is not a small task. So to do that, Oregon's going to have to come correct. I hope they do. If they do, we further the conversation of how great this Oregon squad team is.
I'll tell you what, it may end up being an all-time season. Tennessee at Georgia. Georgia's a 10.5-point favorite. Another one it's the ABC games, the ABC night game. The atmosphere should be absolutely crazy. Like, I'm expecting it to be nuts, and that's cool.
Yeah, it is. It is cool. I'm similar to my earlier point about Missouri and South Carolina. I mean, this is much higher stakes. Obviously, this is real. These are deservedly 12 and 7 teams.
Yeah, kind of an eliminator here.
Yeah, It is a big game, but this is another one that I'm like, that like whoever wins this, I'm gonna go, that's awesome. Like I know that I am gonna care, but I also don't care. And the hype the hype that it's getting is gonna be like both of these teams are not better than the teams above them. You know, Tennessee may not even be better than the 7 that they deserve. But it's a great, like you're saying, great primetime team. The Between the Hedges is going to be absolutely rocking. It's going to be bonkers at Sanford, and I am excited that it's happening. And it's a good. Are they who we thought they were thing? Can Beck do things? Where is the Georgia defense at? What's going on?
Yeah, Tennessee beating Georgia would be fine. Just turns out that Georgia's maybe not great and Tennessee's okay, but that will feel like it's a huge win, even though it may not be. Right? And in the reverse, Georgia beating Tennessee, it's like, Tennessee's shown to be fallible throughout the season. It's not a big deal. Right?
Yeah, we don't know about Nico, all that kind of stuff. So it feels bigger than it actually should be in my mind. But it's going to be a great game. I'm excited. It's a good late night game. Sanford is going to be rocking.
Yeah, it should be an awesome ABC game. Other notable game, Kansas travels to BYU, where BYU is a 3-point favorite. Late, 9:15 Central game. If Kansas is the Kansas that they've been looking like lately, then BYU better be ready for primetime. Now, here's the thing. I think that Provo will be absolutely ready.
I think so, too.
I think they'll be absolutely ready. But this is also the kind of team that if your fan base isn't super stoked, may not show up for a late evening game. So if the atmosphere isn't there, then they got a problem. But I think the atmosphere will be there because BYU's at that level now where everybody in Provo wants to go see it.
Yeah, at one point in time, you and I were the only 2 black people in the city of Provo watching BYU. That was a real thing that happened. I mean, I'm bullshitting, but that's not real. But we were there, and even on a day where it didn't matter about BYU winning, it was the most average BYU team. The Provo faithful came out, and this is the type of game that people from Logan and people from St. George and maybe not from St. George, but people from all over the northern part of Utah drive their cars down to Provo, try to find a ticket and get there. Like it is Provo. For the folks that don't know, it's not exactly a city that gets rowdy. You're not going to have a crazy, a super crazy gate. What am I thinking of? Gate. Pregame situation. A lot of people are tailgate. Yeah. There's not going to be tons of rowdy tailgate. It's not that environment in BYU. However, the Provo faithful are faithful, and they will come out. And they got an undefeated squad. They know they're in it. They're seeing their squad on ESPN. They're seeing it in their TikToks and their Instagrams. They're seeing it. So I think that Provo will be rocking. It is a stadium that lets the air out a bit. But it still rocks. The Rockies are going to be right there to assist the team, and I think BYU, based on what they've done thus far, can get correct. But it's very interesting to me that Vegas only put this at 2.5. That there's some scaredness there, just because I feel like they don't know what they. I think BYU wins this game by like 10, but who knows?
Sure, yeah, fine. I think that just the fact that it's happening is exciting. Yeah. And the fact that Kansas, if the Kansas team that we thought Kansas would be at the beginning of the season, we would think that they would be able to play in this game.
I think so,
and
too.
If that Kansas team is what this Kansas team becomes, then might have a surprise.
Yeah, BYU's got to get it right.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Thanks for listening. I'm excited to kind of close it out. In a couple of weeks, I'm going to hopefully go to Jacksonville for Sam Houston versus Jacksonville, so I hope both of those teams win this week.
That's going to be fun. All right, thanks for listening, everybody.
Yep. Bye.